Hello everyone. Today we will see the president and the vice president. So what we learn here, the president, qualification for election, composition of electoral college, reason for indirect election, term of office, procedure for impeachment. We will see his power, executive, legislative, financial, judicial, discretionary and emergency power, and we will see about vice president, his qualifications for election, terms of office and power. So let us first see this president. The executive power of Indian Union is vested in president. Okay, that means the power of executing the things in India is with president. He exercises this power either directly or through all officers of the Union who are his subordinates in accordance with the Constitution. Okay. Now, how he can execute this power? So he can execute this power either by himself, or there are so many officers. There are so many officers of Union who are his subordinate, and with the help of them, president can exercise this executive power. The president is head of the state and the supreme commander of the defense force of India. So he is the head of state, as we have head of family. Similarly, he is head of our country, or he is head of state, we can say. And he is the supreme commander. Now supreme commander, again we can say that he is the head, we can say he is the head of defense force of India. That means whatever he says to defense force, they have to follow his orders. The president exercise his power on the advice of prime minister and the council of minister. Now how he exercise his power means how he execute his power. So he execute his power on the advice of prime minister and council of ministers. So he listen prime minister and council of minister, and based on what they are telling, accordingly he take the decision. The constitution provide that there shall be a council of minister with the prime minister at the head to aid and advise the president in the exercise of his or her functions. If we see our constitution, in our constitution there is a provision of council of ministers and the prime minister who will help or who will advise president to execute his power, to execute his function. According to 42nd Amendment Act, it is necessary for the president to exercise his or her function in accordance with the advice of council of minister. Now in 42nd Amendment Act means when our constitution was amended 42nd time. So in that there was a provision made that president will exercise his function on the advice of council ministers. Okay, so council ministers, whatever they advise, accordingly he or she will function. Okay, so here we have seen that president is the ultimate power. We can say that president is the supreme, we can say supreme of the state. He is the head of the state, as well as he is head or supreme of the defense force, and he has executive powers which he can exercise with the help of advice of prime minister and council of ministers. Now qualification for election. So how you can become a president, or what is the eligibility criteria to become a president? Qualification for a president, or qualification for to contest an election for president. Okay, you have to first contest an election. So for that, what should be the qualification for election? So a person shall be eligible for election as president if he is a citizen of India. Okay, so the first condition is that if you want to go for election for president, then you should be a citizen of India. Second, has completed the age of 35 years. This is the second condition, that you should have minimum 35 years of age. So any person who is more than 35 years, he can contest for president. Is qualified for election as a member of Lok Sabha. Is a qualified for election as a member of Lok Sabha. Now all the qualifications which are necessary to be a member of Lok Sabha, all those qualifications should be there. Okay, then you can qualify for election for a president. So this is the qualification. Okay, what are the qualifications? First we see that person shall be eligible for election as a president if he is a citizen of India, has completed 35 years of age and is qualified for election as a member of Lok Sabha. A person shall not be eligible for election as a president if he hold any office of profit under the government of India or the government of any state or under any local or other authority subject to control of any of the said government. Now if you are a government employee and you are holding a position, okay, so what is said that you cannot be eligible, you are not eligible for election as a president if you hold any office of profit, any office of profit, like you are an income tax officer maybe, okay, or some other officer, okay, who is holding an office of profit. Either you hold that position in Indian government or in any state government or in any local area. Okay, so you are not supposed to elect, or you are not supposed to contest in the election for president. So you have to first give resignation from that post and then you can contest for election. A person is not deemed to hold an office of profit by reason only that he is president or vice president or a minister either for the union or any state. However, a person is not deemed to hold an office of profit by reason only that he is a president or vice president or minister either for union or any other state. A person who hold or who has held office as a president shall be eligible for re-election to that office subjected to other provisions of the constitution. Composition of electoral college. Okay, so let us understand what this second point mean. What we say that a person shall not be eligible for election if as a president if he hold the office of profit. So we understood that you should not hold any office of profit. Now and second they say that however a person is not deemed to hold an office of profit by reason only that he is a president or vice president or minister either for the union or for any state. This is little confusing. However, a person is not deemed to hold an office of profit by reason only that he is a president or vice president. So here I think it considers that if you are a president or vice president or a minister, okay, then it is not considered that you are holding a office of profit. Okay, a person who hold or who has held office as president shall be eligible for election. So here it is said that if you are holding a position of president, then you are eligible for re-election to that office subjected to other provisions of the constitution. Okay, so there are some conditions in constitution. If you are fulfilling, then you can contest for re-election. Composition of electoral college. Now electoral college, it is something which consists of the people who can give vote for president. A president is elected indirectly by the member of electoral college consisting of, so the president is elected indirectly. So directly people are not giving vote. Okay, he is elected indirectly and he is elected indirectly by the members of electoral college. Now this electoral college, it consists of the elected member of both houses of parliament, so that is members of Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. Okay, So this electoral college, it is made up of members of Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. Second, the elected member of Legislative Assembly of the state. As we have Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha in country, similarly in different states we have Legislative Assembly. So the elected members of Legislative Assembly, they are also the members of electoral college. So Legislative Assembly of states, including National Capital Territory of Delhi and Union Territory of Pondicherry. Nominated member of either houses of the Parliament and State Assembly are not eligible to be included in the electoral college. Now the nominated members, and the last chapter we understood that there are few members who are nominated. So these nominated members in either of the houses and the State Assembly, they are not eligible to be included in the electoral college. A presidential candidate will have to be proposed by 50 members of the electoral college, MPs or MLAs, and seconded by another 50 members. So you can contest for presidential seat, okay, if you are proposed by 50 members, 50 MPs and MLAs. So there should be at least 50 MPs and MLAs who should propose you, who should propose that, who say that ki, okay, yes, this man should be contest, this man should contest for presidents, and yes, it is seconded by another 50 member. Earlier the requirement was 10 proposer and 10 seconder. So earlier, if 10 members are proposing and 10 are seconding it, okay, then the member can contest for president. But now the rule was changed. 50 members, okay, there have to be 50 members, MPs and MLAs, who should propose, and it should be seconded by 50 another member. This was increased by an ordinance promulgated in June 1997 that became an act of parliament on August 29, 1997. So this rule was changed in 1997 that key member should be proposed by 50 members. The ordinance also raised the security deposit of a candidate for the presidential election from 2500 to 15,000. Now if you are contesting for presidents, then you have to give 15,000 as a security deposit. The election of the president is held in accordance with the system of proportional representation by means of single transferable vote, and the voting at such election is by secret ballot. Okay, so how this voting is done? So it is held in accordance with the system of proportional representation. Proportional representation means MP is representing so many people in his constituency. So for them he is one person, so his voting right, his number of votes are counted based on how many people he is representing. So that is called proportional representation by members of single transferable vote, and the voting at such election is held by secret ballot. Secret ballot means no one knows that who has given vote in favor of which candidate. Okay. Manner of election. There is a uniformity in scale of representation of the different states as far as possible. There is uniformity in the scale of representation of different states as far as possible. So our country try to make it a tries that every representative of the state should have uniform voting power. Okay, every elected member. So how we are giving power, how we are giving voting right? So every elected member of Legislative Assembly of the state has as many votes as there are multiples of thousands in the quotient obtained by dividing the population of state by the total number of elected member of the assembly. The voting power of the elected member of Vidhan Sabha is calculated according to the following formula. So if you are a member of Vidhan Sabha, then what is your voting power? That is calculated by this formula. So this formula is elaborated here. Okay, the formula is total population of a state divided by number of elected member of the Vidhan Sabha multiplied by 1000 in denominator. Okay, this 1000 is multiplied in denominator. Okay, so this is how your voting right is calculated. Voting right, your voting right means a member of Vidhan Sabha, elected member of Vidhan Sabha, how much voting right that member has, it is calculated by this formula. It is total population of the state divided by number of elected member into 1000. So for example, let us understand this with the help of an example. Ki suppose the total population of state is about 1 crore, na? Yes, it is 1 crore. So total number of elected members, say it is 250. Now there is a population of 1 crore in a state, and there are 250, suppose there are MLAs. Now what is the voting right? So it is 1 crore divided by 250 divided by 1000. So this divided by 1000 means we could write this in denominator as into 1000. Okay, so when we calculate we get 40. So per member has a voting value of 40, right? Similarly, each elected member of parliament has such number of votes as obtained by dividing the total number of votes assigned to MLAs. Now like to one MLA we assign 40 votes. So like this, total number of votes assigned to all the MLAs of the state, it is calculated, and it is divided by elected number of member of parliament. So MPs, member of parliament. Thus the value of vote of an MP. So how the value of vote of MP is calculated? So it is total number of votes assigned to MLAs of all state divided by total number of elected MPs. So the total number of votes of MPs is equals to total number of votes of MLAs of all states. So equal, we can say that equal power or equal right is given to state as well as to the whole country, or we can say that to MP and MLAs. Now single transferable vote system. Under the single transferable vote system, okay, before going to that, there is a diagram. Let's understand this diagram. Okay, what it says, that how the president is elected. So the election of president is done by, or the members of electoral college, they vote for president. Who are these members? So members of electoral college are elected members of the state legislative assembly and elected members of Rajya Sabha and Lok Sabha. Now these members, who appoint them? So they are appointed by people. We vote, and based on our vote, okay, these members are, okay, we get MPs and MLAs, and these MPs and MLAs, they elect president. So indirectly we can say that people only elect the president, right? Now let us understand single transferable vote system. Under the single transferable vote system, all candidates are listed and the elector gives them the number according to his preference. In other words, the voter make as many preference, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 on the ballot paper as there are candidate. So what it indicates, that suppose for the post of president, suppose 3 persons they contested for the election. Okay, 3 persons, they give their name for the post of presidents. So now voters, they have 3 choices. Okay, suppose their name is A, B and C. So now we have to choose from A, B and C whom we want to make president. So the ballot paper means the paper which is given to me for vote, and that 3 names will be there for A, B and C, and in front of them I can mark my preference. Suppose I want that key, okay, the first choice, my first choice is Mr. B. So in front of B I can write he is my first choice first, and for other 2 I will accordingly give second choice, third choice. So voter make as many preferences on the ballot paper as there are candidates. So if there are 10 candidates, so like this I have to give 10 numbers. Once the votes are cast, the first preference vote are counted. Now once everyone has given their vote, so then what happens? Then the election commission, it count the first preference vote. Okay, Mr. A had got say 15 first preference vote, means 15 candidates have given their first choice to Mr. A. Similarly 70 voters have given their first choice to Mr. B, like that. Okay, if any candidate get an absolute majority or more than 50% of the vote, he is declared elected. So to be a president, you should have more than 50% of vote. So if any person has got more than 50% of the vote, he will be declared as president. If no candidate is able to get an absolute majority in the first preference vote, then the candidate who has secured the least vote is eliminated and his second preference votes are taken into consideration. So suppose no one has got majority, absolute majority, no one has got more than 50% of the vote, then in that case the candidate who has secured the least votes is eliminated. So for example, say Mr. C has secured only 10 votes. So what we will do, in the first preference he secured only 10 votes, so we eliminate Mr. C from this presidential contest. Okay, now 10 voters have given their vote first preference to Mr. C, so they are eliminated. Then their second preference votes are counted. Okay, so these 10 voters to whom they have given their second preference, already first preference they have given to C, now it is eliminated, so second preference they must have given either to B or to A, so their second preference votes are counted and accordingly those 10 votes are divided in A and B. Again we check whether 50% complete or not. If anyone get 50% of the vote, more than 50% of the vote, he will be considered as president. If not, then in this way the person who has got least number of vote is eliminated, and then the voters who have given him vote, now their third preference is considered and it is distributed to the remaining participant. So like that this keep on going. So here the vote is transferring, like 10 persons they have given their first preference to Mr. C, but their vote was not wasted. Okay, if C was not be in the contest of that presidential election because he has got least number of vote, then these 10 votes, their second preference was now considered, so therefore it is called single transferable vote system. So here each candidate's vote is counted, it is transferred, right? And like this the person who gets the absolute majority is declared as president. The 29th Constitution Amendment Act 1975 and the 44th Constitution Amendment Act 1978 lays down that any dispute over the election of president shall be declared by the Supreme Court of India. Now suppose there is some dispute. Okay, there is always possibility of dispute. So in this election also, if there is any dispute, then who will decide what is right or wrong? So Supreme Court of India. So according to Constitution, the power is with Supreme Court of India to decide what is correct or what is wrong, or to solve this dispute. Okay, now reasons for indirect election. So here we have seen that there was indirect election, that means the people, they are not giving vote for president. So why this is happening? If the president was to be elected directly by the people, he could become a rival center of power to the Council of Ministers. As we know that we have already elected president, we have already elected central power, we have elected prime minister and his council. Now if we are again electing the president, so it may possible that we elect a person who is having some conflict or rival with the central power. So this would be against the parliamentary system with ministerial responsibilities. As Jawaharlal Nehru said in the Constituent Assembly, we could not have a directly elected president and not give him a real power. Okay, so this is one of the reason why we are not directly contesting the election for president. Then there will be conflict between power of center and that president. Second, since the members in the two houses of the parliament was likely to be dominated by one party, election of the president merely by the majority of members of the union parliament could make him a nominee of ruling party like the prime minister. So if only the members of Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, okay, they are giving their votes, then in that case what will happen? As in Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, the party who is in majority, they have more number of voters, they have more number of members, so they will choose a member from their party as a president. Such a president could not represent the constituent state of the union, and in that case he will not be a true representative of the state of union. The president is elected by electoral college. In India, the electoral college consists of elected members of the two houses of parliament and legislative assembly of the state. Such an electoral college would make the president the elected representative of the whole nation with a clear voice given to the states as well. So here we have seen that here indirectly we are involving all the states as well as center to elect the president. So in that case the president is truly a state representative, a representative of our union. So we have seen how the election is happening and why we are not using the direct method of election. Okay, now oath of office. Before entering upon his office, the president takes an oath in the presence of the Chief Justice of India, or in his absence the senior most judges of the Supreme Court, to discharge the function of President of India, to preserve, protect and defend the constitution and the law, and devote himself to the service and well-being of the people of India. So before he enter in the office of president, he has to take oath in the presence of Chief Justice of India, or if Chief Justice of India is not present, then senior most judges of the Supreme Court. And the oath include discharge of functions of President of India, that he will he will do all the work of President of India. All the work means whatever work are assigned to President of India, those work are done by that person. Preserve, protect and defend the constitution and the laws. So he will preserve, protect and defend the constitution. So he will make sure that the rules laid down by Constitution of India are protected, and he devote himself to the service and well-being of the people of India. Term of the office. The president shall hold office for a term of 5 years. Now once a person is elected as President of India, he function as a President of India for 5 years. He shall continue to hold office notwithstanding the expiry of his term until his successor takes the charge. So after 5 years, until a new president takes the charge, he will work as a president. Vacation of office. The president may submit his resignation letter to the vice president in order to resign his office. Suppose the person who was elected as a president, now he does not want to work as a president, so he can resign from his post and he can give his resignation letter to the vice president. Such resignation will be communicated by the vice president to the speaker of Lok Sabha, and then this resignation letter was communicated through vice president to the speaker of Lok Sabha. The president may for the violation of constitution be removed from the office by the process of impeachment. Suppose a person who was president, okay, he done something which is not correct, means which is a violation of constitution, then that person can be removed from the post of president. There is a process called process of impeachment, and through that process the president can be removed. Now, what is this process? Process for impeachment of the president. When the president is to be impeached for violation of the constitution, either houses of parliament can level the charge as follows. Resolution which is moved after at least 14 days, notice in written, signed by not less than 1/4 of the total member of the house. So how this impeachment process done? So resolution which is moved after at least 14 days. So after 14 days there is a resolution made. Okay, 14 days of what? 14 days of notice in writing. So a notice in writing is given by not less than 1/4 of the members. Okay, and after 14 days there is a resolution which is passed to remove the president. The resolution is passed by a majority of not less than 2/3 of the total membership of the house. Now in this resolution, 2/3 of the member should be with the opinion that the president should be removed from his post. When a charge has been so preferred by either house of parliament, the other house will investigate the charge and the president has the right to appear and to be represented at such an investigation. When a charge has been so preferred by either house, so preferred by either house means either Lok Sabha or Rajya Sabha, they can make a charge on the president that he is violating the rules or laws of constitution. Okay, either house. If suppose Lok Sabha issued the charge, then in that case Rajya Sabha will investigate and the president has a right to appear in front of the Rajya Sabha in that case to represent his point of view. If as a result of investigation a resolution is passed by the majority of not less than 2/3 of the total membership of house by which the charge was investigated, declaring that the charge has been sustained, such a resolution will have the effect of removing the president from his house. So suppose Lok Sabha has made a charge, okay, for president, that he is not doing his lawful work, and Rajya Sabha is investigating, and after investigation Rajya Sabha also find the same thing, that is 2/3 of its member, okay, they feel that this charge is right, correct, then in that case the president is removed from his office. So this is the procedure of impeachment, how the president is removed from his office. Now powers of the President of India. So far we have seen that what are the powers of president, in short we have seen. Okay, then we have seen what is the qualification for the election of president, how the election is happening for president. Single transfer vote system, we have understood how the single vote transfer system is working. We have seen the reason why indirect election is happening in case of presidential election, and we have seen that how we can remove president, or we can say that how the president can be removed from his office, or the procedure how he can himself resign from the office. Okay, now powers of the President of India. The executive power of president include head of union administration, executive power. So what are his executive power? So first, he is the head of union administration. All the executive orders are issued in the name of president. So all the executive orders, they are issued in the name of president only. All the union officials are his subordinates. Appointment of officials of the state. Second power is to appoint the officials of the state. The president make appointment to the key post to run the government's administration. He appoints. So he appoints first the prime minister and the council of ministers on the prime minister's advice. So he appoints prime minister, president appoints the prime minister, and on the advice of prime minister he appoints other council ministers. He summons the leader of the majority group in the parliament and asks him to form the government. So he asks majority group to form the government, the chief justice and the judges of the Supreme Court and the High Court. Next, he appoints Chief Justice of India, Chief Justice and the judges of Supreme Court. He appoints governors of states, the Lieutenant General and the Chief Commissioners of the Union Territories, the Attorney General of India, the Comptroller and Auditor General of India. So these are higher post. Okay, these are some higher post in the government. In the government, we say so government service. These are a different government service, and head of these services are appointed by President of India. The chairman and member of Union Public Service Commission, UPSC. You must heard about this, UPSC, Union Public Service Commission. So chairman of this Union Public Service Commission was appointed by President. The chairman and members of the Planning Commission. Similarly, the chairman and members of Planning Commission are also appointed by President. The chairman and member of Economic Commission whenever appointed. Control over state government. So these are different appointments which President of India does. Third, control over state government. The union government may give necessary directions to the state. During President's rule, the control of the union government over state is there is a control of union government over states is complete. So the President also controls the state government, and this union government may give necessary directions to the state. And when there is a presidential rule, when there is a president's rule, the whole control is with the union government. Union territories and border areas, all the union territories and border areas, okay, they are under his control. They are under control of President. The administration of the union territory and the border areas is the responsibility of President. So their administration is responsibility of President. So this is, we have seen this executive power. Now diplomatic power. So executive power we have seen. Second, diplomatic power. The President has the power to appoint Indian ambassador to other countries. He receives ambassador, high commissioners and diplomatic envoys from foreign nations. All treaties and international agreement are concluded in the name of President, and the President represents India in the international conferences. So this is diplomatic power. Diplomatic power means the power which he execute to make relations with the neighboring countries. Third is legislative power. Address session of Parliament. The President addresses both the houses of Parliament. Both the houses of Parliament assembled together for the first session after each general election to the Lok Sabha and the commencement of first session of each year. So after the commencement of session of each year, and when first time a new party is elected, every 5 years there is a general election. So after general election, the party which is in majority, that makes the government. So after making the government, there is a joint session for this Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, and to this joint session President addresses. So he addresses that joint session. Also he addresses a joint session after completion of each year. In this address he lays emphasis on the internal and external policies of the government. The President has the power to address either house of Parliament or their joint sitting at any time. So anytime he can take the joint meeting of both the houses. Messages to Parliament. He has the power to send messages to either houses of the Parliament, either in regard to any pending bill or to any other matter. Message to Parliament. He has the power to send messages. So President can give message to either house of the Parliament, either in regard to any pending bill or to any other matter. So if there is any matter which President thinks that is important, so regarding that he can give bill. He can give message. Summon and prorogue the House. The President has the power to summon and prorogue the House of Parliament. The power of summon Parliament is subject to the condition that there should not be a gap of more than 6 months between the two sessions of each House. Normally there are 3 sessions of Parliament each year, that is the budget session, February to May, the monsoon session, July to September, and the winter session. Dissolve the Lok Sabha. He can dissolve the Lok Sabha and other fresh elections and order the fresh election. So this is the power of president. He can dissolve Lok Sabha and he can order fresh election. Rajya Sabha is a permanent body not subjected to dissolution. So he can dissolve Lok Sabha, but Rajya Sabha cannot be dissolved. Fifth, nomination of the member. The president nominate 12 members to the Rajya Sabha from among persons having special knowledge or practical experiences in these matters like literature, science, art and social services. The president may nominate 2 members of Anglo-Indian community to the Lok Sabha if he feels that the community is not adequately represented in the house. So this president can nominate 12 members to the Rajya Sabha. Now these members are special members who has special knowledge in different field. Assent to the bill. No bill can become a law without the assent and the signature of the president. So you put any bill in Lok Sabha or Rajya Sabha, it will become law only when it is signed by the president. Once a bill is passed by both the houses, it is sent to the president for his approval. So bill first has to be passed by Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha both, and then it is sent to president for his signature, for his approval. The president may give his assent or withhold the bill or send it back to the house concerned with recommendations. However, if the bill is passed again in the same form, he has to give his assent to the bill. So here president he check the bill. If he find that okay, there should be some amendment, then he can return the bill again to the government. Now second time, if government again passes the bill without any change, then in that case president has to sign the bill. Usually the houses examine the recommendations of the president. So here when president send the bill again without signature, he gives some recommendations that okay, change this and that. So this Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha members, they discuss on that matter, and if they feel that these changes are not necessary, then they can again pass the bill without any change. And if they feel that okay, change should happen, then they mention accordingly. Seventh is promulgate ordinance. Promulgate ordinance. So under Article 123, the president can promulgate an ordinance which the same status as an act of parliament. The president may withdraw the ordinance at any time. The power of promulgate an ordinance is subjected to the following conditions. Now president can also issue an ordinance, can pass an issue an ordinance. We will say that will know everyone about the ordinance, and at any time he can withdraw the same also. The power to promulgate an ordinance is subjected to the following conditions. The president must be satisfied that the circumstances make it necessary for him to take immediate action. So when he can promulgate the ordinance, when he feel that it is necessary for him to take immediate action. An ordinance can be promulgated at a time when both houses of parliament are not in session. However, if one house is in session, there is no bar in issuing of ordinance. The ordinance so promulgated should be laid before both the houses of parliament when they resembles. If the parliament does not approve the ordinance, it lapses. So if an ordinance was promulgated by president when both the houses are not working, then once they resume their service, they first check this ordinance. Okay, if the parliament does not approve the ordinance, and if it is not approved by the parliament, then this ordinance is lapses. If an ordinance is not disapproved, it will automatically cease to operate at the end of 6 weeks from the date of parliament reassembles. So any ordinance, okay, which suppose is not disapproved, suppose it is not disapproved by any of the house, then in that case it automatically ceases, it automatically ends at the end of 6 week when these houses, this parliament, it reassembles. The ordinance lapses if it is replaced by an act of parliament. Suppose parliament replaces this ordinance, so this ordinance lapses. Assent to some state bill. The governor may reserve some bill passed by the state legislature for the consideration of the president. The government may reserve some bills passed by the state legislature for the consideration of president. The president can refuse his assent to such a bill, or he can also send it back for reconsideration. Bills affecting matters such as the power of High Court are reserved for consideration of the president. Formation of new states. A bill for the formation of new states or alteration of areas of the existing states cannot be introduced except on the president's recommendation. So if a president recommends, then we can introduce any bill related with formation of new state. And here this 8th point was assent to some state bill. So the governor may reserve some bill passed by the state legislature for the consideration. Suppose some state legislature, they pass some bill. So president can ask those bill for his consideration. He can refuse his assent to such bill and send it back for reconsideration. Okay, so he can refuse that bill, and he can resend that bill to the legislature assembly for reconsideration. Now next is financial power. So this is legislative power we are seeing. So nine points are there. Then financial power. Money bill can be introduced only on the recommendation of president. Okay, this is first financial power, that money bill can be introduced only on the recommendation of president. The annual budget contains the estimates of income and expenditure of the union government for the coming year. The finance minister on behalf of the president places the annual budget before the parliament. The annual budget contains the estimates of income and expenditure of the union government for the coming year. The finance minister on behalf of the president places the annual budget before the parliament. So this annual budget which we see every year, okay, this is presented by finance minister, but it is presented on behalf of the president. The annual financial statement is also laid before the parliament in the beginning of every financial year on the behalf of president. The president can authorize withdrawal of advices from the contingency fund of India to meet unforeseen expenditures. The president can authorize withdrawal of advances from the contingency fund of India to meet unforeseen expenditure. Such expenditure should be subsequently approved by the parliament. After every 5 years, the president approves. The president appoints a finance commission comprising a chairman and 4 other members. The commission makes recommendation to the president on the financial matter. So 5th point is that after every 5 years, the president appoint a finance commission comprising a chairman and 4 other members. The commission make recommendation to the president on financial matter. So after every 5 years, this president, he appoints one finance commission which is comprises a chairman and 4 other members. Now what they do, these members and chairman, they recommend president on the financial matter. The 4th point is that the president can authorize withdrawal of advances from the contingency fund. So some advances are passed in contingency fund, the president can withdraw them in case of some unforeseen expenditure. Now military power. The president is supreme commander of armed forces of India. The president is the supreme commander of armed forces of India. He appoints the chiefs for the 3 wings of armed forces subjected to certain rules and regulations. So chief of armed force, we can say that air force, navy and military is appointed by president. The president has the power as to make declaration of war and peace on the advice of council of ministers. Now the president can declare a war or he can advise for a peace on the recommendation of council of ministers. This is his military power. Then next is judicial power. Judicial power. The president is not answerable before any court of law for the exercise of power and duties of his office. No criminal suit can be initiated against him during his tenure of office. So till he is the President of India, no criminal case can be no criminal suit can be initiated against him. So if you wanted to initiate any criminal suit, you have to first remove from his post of precedence. The President has the power to grant pardon, reprieves, respite or remissions of punishment, or to suspend, remit or commute the sentence of any person convicted for an offence. Now again the President has some power that he can grant pardon. If someone has committed something and court has given punishment, so that punishment President can remove. Okay, in all the cases where the punishment or sentence is by court martial, so where he can exercise his power when it is a case of court martial, or in all cases where the punishment or sentence is for an offence against any law related to the union and concurrent list. In all cases where there is a death sentence. Now where there is a death sentence, in that case also President can use this power that he can pardon the person, or he can somewhat relax his punishment. Okay, so in many cases, in many death cases, we have seen that they ask a president, they go for president for reconsideration, right? Why? Because president has the power. And then we have few more powers. Okay, so let us see these powers in our next class. Okay, so far what we have seen, actually this power part was a lengthier one, right? So we have seen powers of President of India. So different category of power we have seen. Executive power, we have executive power. Then diplomatic power is there, legislative power is there. Then we have financial power, we have military power, judicial power, okay, and so on. So in our next class we will see few more powers.